What's up, folks, and welcome to Indie Ramble. So I got a first-person shooter for you today, and this one is very interesting because it's one of those games that was largely made by one person, and when you see the scope and ambition of this, it's frankly pretty impressive. So this is ADACA, and as you can see up there, it's a game by a person who goes by the name Siris Pendrake, and it was done by them and a couple of someone did the music, and there was a couple other few people involved. And if you check the credits, you'll notice that this game actually uses a lot of store-bought assets, which gets a lot of people's backs up because they hear store-bought assets and they unfortunately often go to things like asset flips and stuff. But a lot of good stuff can be made with those pre-made assets. I mean, they exist for a reason, right? And this is definitely one of those. So it's a little strange. So this was in early access for a while, and it's actually 1.0 now, but it's not fully complete either. The developer said that there is going to be another episode coming for the campaign, as well as more content for the zone patrol mode. So yes, this has two very distinct, almost completely different types of games baked into one thing here, actually. I'm going to be showing both, so if you want to see one or the other, check the chapter links down below. That'll take you to where those places are. And, well, to say this game wears its inspirations on its sleeve would be a massive understatement. This game wears its inspirations in a full-body tattoo. Let's put it that way. But again, not a bad thing necessarily. Now, I've actually finished the campaign of this already, at least what's available. So, there, like I said, there's going to be a third act apparently coming at some point, and I believe that's free content, which is pretty cool. But I've only finished the first 2 episodes so far. There is a story in this and some fiction. The story's not the heaviest thing in the world, but it's kind of interesting. And I'll show you what I mean when I say it wears its inspiration. But here's the cool thing. So because I finished it, I got all the different chapters here. And what is really neat as well is this game, this is not a boomer shooter per se. It is definitely a more modern shooter, but it has a lot of boomer shooter elements in it. One of which is, for example, you can do modifiers here. So you can turn on all of these extra things that generally make the game harder, but can add in an additional challenge for people who want it. It also has a crazy number of difficulty settings, and it actually says what they'll affect. So it affects NPC behavior and stats in your health regeneration, but it will not affect how much health the enemy has, which is usually how difficulties work. Your damage output, the composition of encounters, the difficulty of puzzles. The AI in this game is interesting. It's better than some games, but it also kind of gets hung up on itself sometimes. So I played it on normal. It was generally pretty easy, though there were some late game encounters where the difficulty kind of went whoop. So, you know, your mileage may vary on that. But, all right, let's fire up one of the earlier missions here, and I'll show you what I mean here. So, okay. To say that this game is very heavily inspired by Half-Life and maybe a little bit of Halo, again, yeah, it really is. But I don't say that in a derogatory manner because, hey, it ain't like Valve's giving us any more Half-Life content, am I right? Yeah. So this is not Half-Life 3. This does not take place in the Half-Life universe or anything like that. But what this is a game that has a lot of Half-Life-esque elements in it. And wow, I just died there because I totally screwed that up. So you obviously saw right from the get-go there that you have the equivalent of the gravity gun, basically. One of your arms has this gun on it that allows you to pick up most inanimate objects and throw them at fools. You also have a really cool mechanic, which is that you saw me do it before too. When an enemy gets to a low enough health state, you can just steal their gun right the heck out their hands and shoot them with it. And the AI does have to react to that. And this is where the AI does have some cool elements to it. The AI will actually retreat when you do things like that. And when you do run into AI in packs, they will take cover, they will react in a pack, they will call out to each other. They will do different elements like that. Unfortunately, it is not a perfect system, to be sure. I've seen the AI kind of run in circles sometimes. I've seen it kind of get... This is just... Much like when you first got the gravity gun in Half-Life 2, this is just, like... it never gets old. It never gets old. I have seen the AI kind of run in circles sometimes. I have seen it have a hard time figuring out where it needs to get to. You know, I have... Oh. For some reason, I thought that led to a secret, but obviously not. I swear to God, I played this way better. You know how it is when I record a video. I start to suck at things. I either start to suck at a game, or I start to do way better than I did when I played it offline. In this case, it's clearly the former, but, you know, whatever. So, yeah, the AI does have some problems. I have seen it do some sort of derpy things once in a while. But when it does work, which is most of the time, it works quite well. I have actually found it to be rather challenging in spots. And as fun as it is to throw stuff around as I've been doing here, as you can see, it's not always the smartest play, because as you're trying to line up your shots, fools can hit you real quick. So you got to be careful. You got to learn to take cover. You gotta really learn to play your battles smart. Doesn't help that this also checkpointed me when I'm pretty badly hurt, but you know. So yeah, there's a lot of fun with physics in this, in that Half-Life-y way. There are a couple of puzzles in this. None of the puzzles are particularly difficult. But what this game does have that's quite interesting is its own little spin on the old school shooter mentality of secrets. So you have there are secrets in this, but the way it normally works in most older shooters or modern boomer shooters is that you have to go find sort of a hidden part of the level. Usually it's a breakable wall, or it's a piece of geometry you can jump behind where things are, you know, where things are a little bit, the wall looks a little different or something like that. And that will lead you to usually a stash of items or sometimes a secret level as well. What this game does is spread throughout it are a series of safes that have codes on them. And the codes can be found, but they're actually quite difficult. So this is one of the only secrets that you just walk into here. And you see there's a data log, and yeah, remember how I said this was a little bit of Halo? That look familiar to anybody? Yeah, exactly. So, and the codes for those safes are very hard to find. In fact, there have actually been a bunch of people, I made a totally bad jump there. There have been a bunch of people in the Steam forums who are trying to have discussions to find out what all the codes are. I think somebody gave away one or two. I don't know if it was the dev or not, but they said, yeah, here's one or two, that's all we're giving you. And it's become quite a thing. So it's a different spin on secrets. I don't have the time or patience to put in for that kind of thing, but a lot of people do. A lot of people enjoy that kind of thing. And I think it's cool that they're doing that. So that's a neat way to go about it. And while to this point, I have definitely talked about how this game wears its inspiration very clearly on its sleeve. You shoot my grenade out of the air, you little bugger. Yeah, that's what you get. While I have talked a lot about how this game wears its inspirations on its sleeve, I'm honestly not saying that in a derogatory manner, because this game very much has its own personality and its own ideas and its own implementations of those ideas. This is not a game that is trying to just, you know, be Half-Life with a wink and a nod, despite the sort of weapons and the gravity gun and these enemies who are very clearly modeled after the Combine. You know, it's not just trying to be a new Half-Life. It's not trying to be the Half-Life 3 that Valve will never give us before the sun burns out. It's trying to be, it has its own ideas and its own identity. It borrows very heavily from some source material that came before that does make it seem a little familiar. But if you play this for any real length of time, you're going to go, yeah, okay, there's something else to this. And obviously it looks rather interesting. It has this sort of low poly, sort of hard-edged, polygonal kind of look. It's almost voxely in some ways, which I think is pretty cool. I think it's actually pretty striking. And there's really neat use of color in this. all the levels in this, so this campaign mode is very linear, and all the levels are bespoke. They're very well designed. There's a lot of interesting, there's some platforming to do. The environments change a lot. The enemies get a lot different from each other. Some of them are a little baffling in terms of the way they behave, but I think that's intentional. And you're going to see a wide variety of different environments and things to interact with. There will be NPCs you can talk to, though again, you know, the story in this isn't bad, but I didn't think it was all that mind-blowing. Though that said, I haven't seen it all yet because there's still another chapter to come out. You know, so we have some little traversal here, this kind of thing. You know, some of the boxes you can open and get some extra upgrades out of them, things like that. And you'll be in some... I will say that, especially in the back third, the difficulty curve does seem to get a little strange. I had some levels that were a breeze and then others that were an absolute ass kicker. So, you know, it's a little... It gets a little uneven in that sense. But the more I played this, especially in the later game, and seeing how, again, how bespoke all of these levels are and how well a lot of them were designed and how well they flow between each other and how well the encounters flow, I was like, man, this is one person. That's impressive, you know. And yeah, it's not a super long experience, but it's interesting and challenging. I do wish sometimes that the weapons were a little bit punchier in terms of their sound, and I do wish that there was a little bit, like, that's a very, like, that's like the uber generic, like, assault rifle sound, right? That you've heard in a million other things. You know, I think if the guns could have been a little bit more punchier, and had a little bit more kickback to them, the damage feedback doesn't always seem that strong. Like, you get that very nice marker on your crosshair that indicates that you're hitting an enemy, and headshots don't kill enemies instantly, though they do more damage. Which kind of makes sense because a lot of the enemies in this are somewhat armored, so you can understand that a headshot would not be an instant kill, right? But yeah, the combat does feel good. I just think it could feel a notch or two better than it does. But I enjoyed my time with this, and I very much do look forward to playing episode 3. Another thing I leaned on Tale of Bastoon for this in my last video, and I'm going to lean on this one for it too. No cloud saves. I know for a fact it's really easy to enable cloud saves now. Valve has made it dead simple. In the era of the Steam Deck, I really think Valve should be mandating that and making it required. As someone who owns both a desktop and a gaming laptop, you know, it would have been, when I was trying to play this for research, it really was a bummer when I loaded up my laptop and went, oh, my save's not here. And in the era of the Steam Deck, you really have to do that now. I really implore Siris Pendrake, please release an update where you enable cloud saves. I don't even think you have to patch the game to enable it. I think it's just done on the back end. Game also doesn't have achievements, which is a little weird. I mean, Steam achievements, most people can take them or leave them. I don't really care. It's just odd to see them left out. It's another thing that's easy to implement, and that there are some people out there who won't buy games without achievements in them. So, you know, just saying, given the clear amount of effort that they put into developing this, and the fact that they clearly know how to make Unreal Engine do some cool work, it just odd little omissions, you know? A bit weird and different. So you're kind of getting the idea here. So I'm taking out. This is a shorter level where there isn't as much actual level, but you just have this sort of combat encounter. But some of the levels are quite a bit bigger. Some of them are fairly open, and you can actually approach the levels in different ways. Even though the story is linear, there are some levels where you can go at the level or different larger encounter areas in multiple different ways, which is pretty cool. So yes, you do have grenades in this as well. You have multiple types. You'll have regular grenades, flame grenades, and electrical grenades. I will say one other place the AI kind of falls down a little bit is, especially with the electrical grenades, sometimes you'll shoot them and they'll be affected by them, and you'll just see the model going kind of up and down, and it looks kind of dumb, kind of funny too, but also kind of goofy. So there's, you know, there's things like that. But yeah, you'll find that you'll get through these different spots here. So here you actually can swim. And basically you're going to go through all these different areas, and yeah, the environment changes a lot. It's not just a, you know, a linear series of endless corridors and samey looking places. You will run into a lot of different, go through a lot of different places and meet a fairly decent variety of enemies. I won't go too far into details because I won't spoil it, but it's more than just these Combine guys. Let me put it that way. There are other things to this. There's more to it. So, again, for a game made by only one person, it's impressive. The amount of variety that's in this is ambitious for an indie project, to put it mildly. And we're only on the first mode. I haven't even shown you the other one yet. Now, we'll get to that shortly. But even for the story alone, at the price this is being sold for, I think the story alone is worth it. I enjoyed it. I think it plays, you know, is it the best shooter I've ever played? No. Is it the worst? Not even remotely close. You know, it has a lot going for it. It has some cool ideas, and yeah, a story that takes a lot of inspiration from Half-Life is cool these days, when Half-Life 3 is probably never a thing that's going to happen. But this wasn't also just another Half-Life mod that repurposed the Half-Life assets to do their own thing. There's nothing wrong with that either. There have been some amazing Half-Life mods, but, you know, again, this has its own identity and is doing its own thing. So this is one of the open levels that you can approach in a number of different ways if you want. The level design is the thing in this that honestly impressed me the most. Just the how different all the levels are, and how they flow together well, and how they're not, you know, no environment in this game is boring. And I really appreciated that. I think my only real issue with the core gameplay is that I do wish the AI was a little bit better. They're not bad, and they don't just do what the AI in so many games does, which is just blindly run straight at your face. But they do hiccup sometimes. Let me put it that way. But yeah, just this mode alone, I think is worth the price of admission, especially since there's a whole other episode coming, as I understand it, for free, which is pretty great. But that said, let us check out the other mode that we have here. So this is very different. So this is Zone Patrol. So I'm going to reset this. Now, I have to admit, I have not played very much of this, because this is very different. You got to be into this. This is almost more of a survival game, kind of. They call it an alternate non-linear exploration experience. And as you see, two different experiences that can be played in either order. So if you're a person who likes traditional shooters where you just go from set piece to set piece shooting up fools, then this may be for you, this may not be. This is much more, I would say the design of this is much more old school, in the sense that this mode doesn't hold your hand. You have objectives to complete here, and and it's extremely non-linear. You have things that you are tasked with doing, tasks that you were performed, or that you were tasked with performing. You're dropped into the world, and it's basically like, okay, go do it. And that's it. This game will not lead you by the nose. It won't be like a modern Bethesda RPG where it literally points you to everywhere you have to go and you just go there. It drops you onto a large map, and you have to figure out how to get there. And you got to survive through the whole place in order to get to your objective and complete it. And you have to figure out your way through. Like, this is a game where this is a mode where you're going to have to put notes on the map, and possibly even keep your own map separate. That's a very old school mentality. A lot of older school RPGs and exploration games, back in my day, you actually had to keep like graph paper out to keep track of your map, because not only did the computing resources not really allow for that to be done by the game, it was also a way that the game made itself longer and more challenging. And it was a lot of work, but you also, and it seems old and quaint by today's standards, but at the same time, it was, you really felt like you accomplished something when you did it. Pride and accomplishment. Downvote away. Please don't do that. So it did make you feel, though, that you'd had a real tangible impact, and you were like, yeah, I figured that out. I did that. That's awesome. And yeah, that's much more what this is like. Now, this is already different from the last time I played it. The last time I played it, it was night, which made things really interesting. So you're going to see here, now you can turn on an AI companion that you'll find sometimes as well, which is handy. They're not super helpful, but they can be sometimes. Now, you have an objective, right? And you're going to find out things as you go. So right now I'm just doing general recon, but eventually I'll get an objective to do something else. And this is what the map looks like. You notice how there's my landing zone, but you notice how there's no marker? Yeah, it only tells you what zone you're in. It doesn't tell you specifically where you are. You can add notes to the map if you want, but you can't even attach these notes to a specific location. You just have notes that you can refer to, but you can't actually, you know, go take this thing and pin it there. You can't pin anything. It doesn't direct you anywhere. You have to find the transition points between the levels. You have to find these little side objectives that you can potentially try to repair, to, you know, help things out that will give you additional quests, or, you know, help out your, potentially give you upgrades or more power. The levels are full of those towers with red lights on them. You can turn them on and off. You have to use those as visual markers in order to figure out where you have to go next. And all the while you're going through this level, enemies are going to show up. And you're going to have to fight them off, and you're going to have to do it with, and try not to get killed as you go. And you're going to have to go around and look and remember. So you'll find sometimes things like this that give you some generalized information. So see, Southeast Comms Relay, the dish. So this was the thing that I found. So you have to look around and find these little tidbits of information that can potentially help you get more idea of where you have to go and what you have to do. And you have to remember where those maps transition. Like here, I just found one point. So this is going to take me to another section. So now I'm in the storm drain. So that was to the south. So I have to remember that. Now you do have a compass at the top of your screen, which obviously makes it a little bit easier. Yeah, see, so this was the mission the last time too. I have to make my way to the power plant. So the power plant, yeah. So you have to pay attention to the direction you're going in, and you have to find the transition points between the maps to get to your objective. You have to accomplish your objective. And enemies could pop around at any time. I believe where the enemies are placed is random, because one time I tried to play this, there was basically nobody around for a long time. Another time I was fighting fools off pretty much right away. See, you need to find key cards. It's old school in its design sentiment, very old school. And this mode is you're either going to think this is cool, or you're, hi. Oh, sorry, that was my companion. Sorry, bro. You're either going to find this super cool and compelling, or you're going to find this frustrating and be like, my God, who would ever want to play a video game this way? If you're one of the latter, you'll probably dig the campaign. Okay, you are not my companion. But if you're someone who's into survival games, you could potentially really like this. This isn't a traditional survival game in the sense that... Hey, get back here. This isn't a traditional survival game in the sense that you're not managing, you know, your need to eat or your need to drink or sleep or whatever. Are you... Wait. I think this person's friendly. That's not my companion. But also, they're just walking around, and they're a robot. They're not talking to me, but also they're not shooting at me. See, I've never run into that before neither, so I'm learning something new even now. But it's compelling in the sense that you have to find your way through. I was about to say make your own fun, and that is really not what you have to do here. But you have to find your way through these levels and figure out where you have to go and how you're going to get there to complete these missions. And then you'll go back to your ship and you'll get something... Okay, then. And occasionally the world may just go super bizarro on you, and that's a thing you have to manage. So, you know. OSHA would have a field day. So, yeah, really different kind of way to approach a first-person shooter, and really the type of thing that we don't really see anymore. This harkens back to, and while I don't think this mode is for me anymore, I'm just too old and too busy to have time for this kind of mode. Ow! Okay. While I'm just too old to have time for this kind of mode anymore, I think this I find really neat, because unlike what are called boomer shooters now, which, don't get me wrong, I love to death, but boomer shooters harken back to a bygone era of hyper-fast run-and-gun, you know, kill everything that moves type of gameplay. Okay, you are not my companion either. You're also really fast. Okay. I don't think I'm going to make it out of here. But, you know, boomer shooters go back to a very different... Who are you and why did you just spawn in? I don't know. They harken back to an old school design mentality of action gameplay that people who played games in that era really loved. What this does is this harkens back much more to an era of gameplay where you are dropped into a space and have to figure out what to do with limited resources that you have, and the game will not hold your hand, and it won't... What's up? What are you? Okie doke. And it won't hold your hand, and it's like, okay, here's a place, go do stuff. And that's the way a lot of older games were. And back at that time, a lot of people really loved that. And we haven't seen a lot of game developers going for that kind of design sense. And that's what Siris Pendrake did with this game, in addition to making a fairly compelling, just linear first-person shooter in general. And it's just a really neat package. And I love that they were clearly inspired by, you know, by Half-Life, but didn't just say, I'm going to make a knockoff of Half-Life. No, they're like, I like Half-Life and I like some of the ideas about Half-Life, but I'm going to just use that as a basis for my own ideas and my own experience. What's up? Sorry. I'm going to use this as a basis for my own experience and my own ideas and my own, you know, different take on stuff. And that's the kind of thing I love to see. Like I said, I don't see myself spending a lot of time with this mode, but with the campaign I thought was cool. You're still following me, huh? The campaign I thought was cool. I will, unless they add cloud saves, please add cloud saves. I'll have to keep this installed until that third episode comes out so that I can give it a go. But oops. Oh, bugger. But I guess this weird guy with the 3 holes in his head is just hanging out now. So, cool. Welcome to the club. But I just think this is doing something really neat. And I think if you are a fan of FPS games, and especially FPS games that beat to their own drum and are doing things a little bit different, I think the campaign alone, honestly, is worth the... Yeah, see, look at this. This shows a whole bunch of different things, too. And you just got to learn all this. There's no journal that keeps all this. You got to write it down. And I think that's really cool. But yeah, if you want something that's different and something that... I think the campaign alone that is worth the money. But this mode you could put hours and hours and hours into if you wanted. So if you're one of those people who thinks that game value is important based on time, like value, like dollar per hour type thing, there's value for days in ADACA, I think. And I just love to see a project made by a single person that's able to achieve so much. And this really does. You know, is it perfect? No, it's got some rough edges here and there, but it still makes for a good experience. And if I had bought this outright, I think I'd have been quite happy with it. So yeah, that is ADACA. It is out now on PC. Check it out. It's not content complete yet, but as I understand it, it's not going to cost you to make it content complete. And what's here now, especially in this mode, gives you a lot of time for your money. But you know what? I played, I don't think I'm even going to play this mode, and I already think the game is pretty cool. So take that for what it's worth. So thank you for watching, everybody. I do appreciate it. If you liked what you saw here, please do all the normal YouTube things, like, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment down below. Tell me, what do you think of this? Does this interest you? What other cool first-person shooters, either retro-inspired or otherwise, are out right now that interest you? Are there other games that have this kind of survival but not really mode to it that I haven't seen? Maybe there's more, and I'd like to see what other people are doing with this kind of idea these days. I think that'd be neat. And as always, you can follow me over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction for multiple variety streams a week. I cover other indie stuff over there that doesn't necessarily fit as well on YouTube, as well as retro stuff. I have a great community there, and I'd love to see you be a part of it. Thanks again, all, and I'll see you on the next Indie Ramble. You guys have a good one. Take her easy.